There's a date in your future. You don't know it yet, but it exists. A Friday, probably. Your last ever payday. The final time in your life that money arrives because you worked for it. And after that Friday, there could be 20, 25, 30 more years of life. Now, if you're like most people earning decent money in this country, you've got a vague, warm feeling that this is handled. Something comes out of your payslip every month. Your employer put something in too. There was a letter about it once. You're enrolled. You're sorted. Here's the problem. That warm feeling was manufactured, deliberately, and the thing generating it was never designed to fund those 30 years. It was designed to make you stop asking. Last episode, I told you auto-enrolment was genius, and I meant it. Defaults beat willpower, and getting the whole country saving by default was one of the smartest policies in decades. But every default has two edges, and here's the other one. The default doesn't just decide whether you save, it decides how much. And the amount was never calibrated to what you'd actually need. The legal minimum is 8% of your pay. 5 from you, 3 from your employer. Except, and almost nobody knows this, it isn't even 8% of your salary. It's 8% of your qualifying earnings, which is your salary minus the first 6 grand or so. On 50,000 a year, the minimum works out at about 3.5 grand annually. That's 7% of what you actually earn, and your employer's share of it is not generosity. It is the lowest number the law allows them to pay, dressed up in an onboarding pack as a benefit. Imagine a restaurant advertising food that meets hygiene standards. That's the boast being made. Meanwhile, the people who study this for a living broadly agree that the number you actually need to be saving is somewhere between 12 and 15% from your 20s without gaps. The gap between 8 and 15 isn't a rounding error. It is the difference between a retirement and a rumor of one. Let me show you the actual arithmetic, because the vague, warm feeling dissolves on contact with it. The industry's own standards body puts a moderate retirement, nothing flash, one modest holiday, a car that works, at roughly 31,000 a year for a single person. The full state pension gives you about 12 grand of that, and only from your late 60s. So your pension pot has to generate around 19,000 a year every year for as long as you live. At a sensible withdrawal rate, that means a pot somewhere near £500,000. £500,000. Now hold that number next to the minimum contributions, quietly leaving your payslip. The government's own analysis reckons nearly 2 in 5 working people are undersaving for the retirement they're expecting. Not the feckless, not the reckless. Enrolled, contributing, doing what the letter said, and still on course to arrive at that final Friday with a pot that runs out while they're still very much alive. And here's the detail that tells you everything about how the number was chosen. When auto-enrolment launched, the minimum wasn't 8%, it was 2. It ramped up slowly over years, and the level was set by asking what employers and workers would tolerate without opting out. Read that again. The default in your payslip was calibrated for political acceptability. Nobody in that room was asking what you'd need at 72. The system needed you enrolled. It never needed you retired. For most people a decade into work, it's somewhere between sobering and insulting. Now remember, the target is 500,000. Right, what do you actually do about it? 3 moves in order of free money. If it's the minimum, you now know the truth of where that road ends. Second, and this is the big one, find out whether your employer matches above the minimum. A huge number of companies will pay in 5, 6, 8%, but only if you raise yours first. And they are under no obligation to advertise it. This is the closest thing to a hidden pay rise that exists in British employment. If your employer matches up to 6 and you're contributing the minimum, you are turning down free salary every single month and calling it being sensible. Third, escalate. You don't need to leap from 8 to 15 tomorrow. Add 1% now. You will not feel it, especially if it goes in by salary sacrifice. Because a chunk of every pound you add is money that would have gone to tax anyway. We covered that door in episode 3. Then use the rule from last episode. Every future pay rise, half goes to future you, and the easiest possible home for it is right here, 1 percentage point at a time. 1% of 50 grand is about 40 quid a month on paper, and after tax relief, it costs your pocket noticeably less than that. Compounded over 30 years, that single point is tens of thousands of pounds in the pot. The creep takes 1% without asking. You're just taking it back. Oh, and while you're in the portal, dig out the pots from your old jobs. The average career now scatters pensions across half a dozen employers, and forgotten pots don't compound any less. They're just compounding where you can't see them. Now the reframe, because this episode is not an attack on your pension. A pension is still the most tax-advantaged, employer-subsidized, quietly powerful wealth machine most people in this country will ever touch. The trap was never the pension. The trap was the word enrolled. Enrolled got read as sorted, and sorted meant you stopped looking. Auto-enrolment put you on the bottom step of the escalator, and that genuinely matters, but the bottom step was never the destination, and nobody was ever going to tap you on the shoulder. The employer won't say it. Their costs go up. The government won't say it. The opt-out numbers look terrible, so the tap on the shoulder had to come from a bloke on YouTube. Consider yourself tapped. So here's your one job, and for once it isn't even maths, it's an email. Tonight, or Monday morning at the latest, send one line to HR or payroll. If I increase my pension contribution, does the company increase its match? And what's the maximum? That's it, one sentence. Because the answer to that question is worth more than every coffee you'll buy this decade. And it's been sitting in a policy document nobody showed you since the day you joined. Episode 2 gave you the scoreboard. 3 showed you the goalposts. 4 moved the ball. This one checks whether your own team's been holding back a striker. See you in the next one.